All right, we're just about ready to get started, I think. Um, Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Seton Hall Prep's Financial Aid Night. As people continue to join the meeting, I just wanted to run over a few housekeeping items. This session will be recorded, so I'm asking everyone to mute their microphones now if they're not already muted. You can choose whether or not you would like to have your camera on during this session. Just keep in mind that it will be posted online at a later date. Once the video is edited, we'll send it out in the link to it through the portal so that you can keep it as a resource. We'll also send out the slide deck and make it available to you after we run through it tonight. This event really serves two purposes. I know this is like top of mind for our seniors right now. The FAFSA recently has been made available to you all, so I know I've already started getting some questions about how to file it and also just broader questions about merit aid, need-based aid, and sort of financial aid as a whole have become bigger parts of my conversations with the students that I've been working with recently. And for our juniors, this is sort of just on the horizon. So it's a great time to really jump in and get an understanding on just one part of the process that you'll start in a few months. I'm so sorry, I have a cat. um, Now I would like to introduce our guest speaker for the night, Roberto Sasso, who is the Assistant Director of Financial Aid and Admission at Seton Hall University. I would also like to highlight that this is something Roberto has been kind enough to do for us over the past few years. He's volunteering his time so that you all can feel more confident when approaching this topic in these forums. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to him now.
Thank you, Candace. Good evening, everyone. My name is Roberto Sasso. I am one of the assistant directors at Seton Hall for financial aid and admissions. And in my main role is I serve as the financial aid liaison for any incoming student enrolling at Seton Hall. So that could be transfer students, first year students. I'm sort of the main point person for information, for resources for any of these students. I work closely with the admissions office. While I'm not an admissions counselor, they come see me every day with questions. Typically, the students will reach out to admissions counselors, and then the admissions counselors come see me. So I'm kind of there to assist with all these types of financial aid related questions. I've been at Seton Hall for since February of 2012 in various roles, and in this role specifically for a little over a year and a half now working with incoming students. So I've done a lot of these presentations over the last year and a half, and I'll plug a little bit of my financial aid webinars later on. But I'm happy to be here tonight and kind of go over some general information related to financial aid that I think you all may find helpful as you start to traverse the new FAFSA that's open and kind of what this next, for those seniors, what the next 6 to 8 months looks like potentially. And for the juniors, it gives you a little bit of an idea of what to expect next year as you start to go through this process as well. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Candace, can you see this okay? Yeah, okay, perfect. I got it.
Looks great.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, thank you. So we will get started. Before I get started, I'll just say that during the presentation, I don't want to take any questions. What I'll encourage you to do is sort of, if there's something that triggers a question that you see it, just write it down. And I'll open up at the end for a Q&A. I'll try to get through as many questions as possible. And then I will do is if we run out of time, then I'll share my email as well, and feel free to reach out with any questions that maybe we don't get into as well. All right, so let's go ahead and get started for today. So it's going to be a little bit of a Seton Hall centric presentation. Most of the things I'm going to talk about are specifically how they do at Seton Hall. Now, it is very likely that other institutions do things the same exact way, but it is also likely that other institutions do things differently. Like, for example, we give out merit aid. Some institutions may not give out merit aid. So that's just kind of one example. What is financial aid, the categories, the types, the sources of financial aid, what the term cost of attendance means and how that pertains to you. Go over the FAFSA. So this would be a heavy FAFSA. um, conversation tonight. So I'm going to cover it, go into detail, share some new changes that took place for this 26-27 version, SAI, and then special and unusual circumstances. These a couple of things that come up very frequently over the years with students. So first things first, what is financial aid? Now, financial aid is essentially any funds that can help pay for college. A common misconception is that it's only gift aid. So while we all may want as much gift aid as possible, the federal government defines financial aid as anything used to help pay for college, which could come in the form of scholarships and grants. Of course, we love those, but also loans, those types of things, and federal work study. So financial aid is a broad term that gets narrowed down moving forward. So there's two types of financial aid that we deal with at Seton Hall. The first is need-based aid, and that's exactly what it sounds. It's a need-based financial aid that is for students who have a need um, for additional funding. Okay, this for us, we only utilize the FAFSA. However, I know many other schools also utilize the CSS profile, which helps determine that as well. Non-need-based aid, which is essentially known as the merit aid, is I define it as sort of like the academic scholarship and then any additional grants that a student may qualify for. So for example, you have your academic scholarship at Seton Hall, a student would be notified of that within a couple days of being accepted. But then there's also additional grants, a university may award an out-of-state grant to a student who's coming from far away. We give out a Catholic Achievement Award. So this is for students who attend a Catholic school and are at a very high academic profile within their Catholic school that translates over. So these are different types of awards that anyone could be eligible for. They are not based on financial need. Now, types of financial aid, I got this little chart here that'll show you a little different types. There's the gift aid, which I mentioned, that's the scholarships and the grants. We all love that. But then there's also what we call the self-help aid, and that's the loans and the work study employment, federal work study. The self-help is exactly what it sounds like. If you're a work study student, you're working to earn a little extra funds to help pay for, maybe stocking your mini fridge, textbooks, these types of things that come after. Loans is, let's say, you want to go to school X and your awards only cover 75% of the cost of tuition for school X. Well, how are we coming up with that other 25%? Well, that could be a loan, that could be 529, that could be out of pocket, so these types of things that's how we break down the types of financial aid. Financial aid comes from different sources, right? Federal government, that's when you complete the FAFSA. You're eligible for some federal funding, whether it's through grants or through loans that the student can have or under the parent's name. As New Jersey residents, you all could be eligible for need-based state financial aid. This is known as the New Jersey TAG Award. You may have heard of that. So that's another option. Colleges and universities, that's another, obviously Seton Hall would award some financial aid. Employers, every now and then we see where a parent's employer will offer, a $1,000 grant to a child of an employee, those types of things. So we do deal with, Verizon, for example, does that. And then just private sources. This could be your church, the Cub Scouts, an outside organization, so any other source that can help provide funding. It could be through, student who does an internship for Essex County, and then Essex County may provide like a little grant as a thank you, these types of things. So let's talk about the federal government. This is the largest source of financial aid because they offer the federal Pell Grant, but they also offer, the loans that each student can have access to, which is called the Federal Direct Loan, just for completing the FAFSA. And parents have the ability to apply for a Parent Plus loan for completing the FAFSA. This is generally aid provided primarily based on need, so that's the federal Pell Grant. not so much the loans, but the Pell Grant specifically. To be eligible for any federal award, you must apply for the FAFSA each year, which, as Candace mentioned, is open currently. It actually opened early, which we were all surprised about that when it opened before October 1st. So that's great. Um, but it is open for 26, 27 now, and you will have to do this every year. So if your student is in a 4-year institution, 4 times you're going to have to do the FAFSA. And then certain eligibility requirements must be met. So this is based on information provided through the FAFSA. Other federal aid programs that come from it is, I mentioned the Pell Grant, the Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant that we refer to as FSEOG. This is actually, this funding is at risk of going away. So it's moving forward, I think it's unlikely students will see this, but it is possible in a limited amount. For certain education programs, there's the Teach Grant, Federal Work Study, that's one of the most common awards as well. I mentioned the federal direct student loans, which are loans offered to students who complete the FAFSA. So every student who completes the FAFSA is eligible to take out in their first year up to $5,500 in a loan from the federal government without an application. So they would, whatever institution they decide to attend, they go into their financial aid page and either accept or decline this loan. That doesn't have to be paid back until 6 months after graduation, or they drop below half-time enrollment. There's the PLUS loan benefit. So that's the loan under the parent's name, which is actually also going to experience an overhaul for 26, 27. And then also veterans benefits that come from the federal government. So kind of transitioning now to the state of New Jersey. The state awards need-based grants to students. The big caveat is that the student must stay enrolled at an institution inside the state of New Jersey. So if you're eligible for a New Jersey Tag Award, you cannot take that New Jersey Tag Award with you to the University of Florida or California or wherever. You must stay in state to utilize this award if you're eligible for it. Now, the award range is anywhere from $1,280 to $14,404. So that varies, obviously, dependent on need. So what happens is, if you are a citizen, the student can fill out the FAFSA, right? They complete the FAFSA, federal government devises their own need-based matrix called the SAI. Then what happens is, when you complete the FAFSA, the student indicates the state of residency that they are in. You would indicate New Jersey. So the federal government sends your FAFSA information to the state of New Jersey, HESA, and they will then evaluate your specific situation to see if the student is eligible for state funding. That's where the NJ Tag Award comes in. The NJ Tag, obviously, New Jersey tuition and grant. Okay, so they determine potential eligibility for this 1,280 to 14,404. Now that amount varies, I mentioned, on financial need, but it also varies based on the institution the student decides to attend. For example, the state understands that it is a little more expensive to attend a school like Seton Hall versus a school like Rutgers. So what the state says is, you know what? We don't want to limit the ability for a student. We want to try our best to assist and let them go where they really want to go. So what happens is a student who has the maximum financial need, as determined by the FAFSA and HESA, and they want to go to attend Seton Hall, they can get the full 14,404. However, the student with the same need won't get that much if they go to Rutgers. So that's why during this college application process and financial aid package process, if you apply to Seton Hall and Rutgers and you have the most financial need, you're going to get a higher New Jersey Tag Award to attend Seton Hall, which is a private institution, versus Rutgers, a public institution. Okay, that information you can see the breakdown on the HESA website, but you may encounter that situation where you'll notice a difference, like why do I get more at Seton Hall versus why do I get less at Rutgers, for example. Okay. There's also residency eligibility too. The student must graduate from a New Jersey high school and those types of things. So In addition, they also offer EOF funding, which is an additional award that the student can receive um, at New Jersey institution that it goes on top of the TAG award. This is typically reserved for students with the highest financial need based on the metrics on the HESA application. Okay. And that website, HESA.org, that's a great resource you can go and explore right now as well. If the student is not a citizen, so they're an undocumented student, they can still, and they've been living in New Jersey, they're going to graduate from a New Jersey high school, they could still go on and apply for the New Jersey alternative application that sort of doesn't make them eligible for federal funding. It only makes them eligible for some state funding. So colleges and universities in general, us at Seton Hall, we provide both merit and financial and need-based aid. Some institutions they don't. It just depends on the institution, but we do both. Um, and then obviously the aid may be gift aid or self-help aid, which is the federal work study, some loans. Um, and then we use this information, like I mentioned, from the FAFSA to determine need-based aid. So a student will get their information on the FAFSA. It's very important that the student indicates the institutions that he or she wants them to receive the information. And that way we get it and we're able to create a financial aid package with that information. Deadlines vary by institutions. We at Seton Hall, we encourage the students to go and complete the FAFSA last week as quickly as possible so that we have, if there's issues, which there always are with students, we're able to troubleshoot any potential FAFSA issues and we can properly sync the FAFSA to the student account. I would say, at least 80% of the time, there's no issues. The student's FAFSA comes in clean, connects to their student account. There's no issues. But every now and then you'll see an issue where there could be a misspelling. Most common issues, honestly, I see are incorrect birthdays, incorrect social security numbers, that the student just puts down their wrong birthday, puts down either no social security number or the incorrect social security number. These are the most common issues that we see, on top of also not including Seton Hall on the school. So it's really important. I can't stress this enough that when you're completing the FAFSA, please make sure that for the sanity of the financial aid administrator at whatever institution you're applying to, please make sure that your birthday is correct and matches what we have in our system. Please make sure that your social security number is correct and matches what we have in our system. Most schools use a special platform that does a lot of this kind of synchronizing and software. So one of the things that the system will do is that it will, if the FAFSA comes in and it either does not have a social security number or an incorrect one, it puts it in like a special folder that we don't know about unless we go look for it. So what happens is it won't sync to the student's account, and the student will say, "Where's my financial? Where's my FAFSA? Do you have my FAFSA?" It's not showing, and we go in and we look to try to retrieve it. It's because they either did not put a social security number, or it's incorrect, or their birthday's incorrect. So these are things that hold up creation of financial aid packages that are simple things that can be avoided, you know. So we encourage you to, before you complete the FAFSA, please make sure all your information is correct. In addition, we mentioned employers as a source of financial aid. They may help provide scholarships. So I really, I'm sure almost everybody here is a parent of a student. Maybe inquire with your employer if they have any benefits that you can use for your student, potentially grants and those types of things. They may have scholarship programs that your student may have to apply for. That's great. It's another avenue. And then private sources, businesses, churches. We see a lot of church scholarships. We see a lot of high school scholarships from the specific institution. Um, we see a lot of town scholarships, so like the commerce, the Chamber of Commerce, the town hall, the mayor, all kinds of scholarships that we see. A lot of churches, obviously. But it's important to kind of explore. That's a common question we get is, where else can I look? You'd be surprised. Your church, your synagogue, wherever it is that you belong to, chances are they may offer some scholarships. The deadlines obviously vary, so you have to keep that in mind. But I would say the best time to look for these scholarships is not in April, it's right now, because now is when there's the least amount of competition. You know, in April, the scholarships have probably already been awarded, and you have thousands and thousands and thousands of students also trying to apply and look for scholarships that either have been awarded or have are just their system is overwhelmed with applications. So definitely the best time to search is now. A term you may hear throughout the process is cost of attendance. Um, so essentially what cost of attendance means is it is a combination of direct and indirect costs. Direct costs are things that you get a bill for. That's tuition, that's fees, and that's food and housing if you're going to live on campus. So, that's your room and board, essentially your dorm, your meal plan, your fees that are mandatory at every institution, and your tuition. Those are things that you are going to get a bill for. However, the federal government allows students to borrow or to obtain awards that cover the full cost of attendance. So what else could be included in that full cost of attendance? Things like books, materials, equipment, transportation, gas. If you're commuting to campus, the transportation would be if like if you're living on campus, but you fly home, twice a semester, that can be included in the cost of attendance. Housing and food. So let's say you live off campus and you have to cook all the time. Well, that can be included in there. If you're on campus, your meal plan is included already in the cost of your housing. But so these are things that all factor in to the cost of attendance. And what happens is, let's say cost of attendance is 100,000, but the tuition and fees and food and room and board is only like 85. The federal government says, you know what, you will, if you want to, you can borrow the additional 15,000, for example. That can help cover some transportation, to help fill your mini fridge, um, to be able to have that money to go to CVS. That varies by institution. Okay, so the cost of attendance at Seton Hall will not be the same as cost of attendance at Rutgers, who will not be the same as the cost of attendance at, North Carolina, University of California. Every institution has their own cost of attendance, and it's a formula put together that is specific to that institution. Okay, so that's really important. So when you hear cost of attendance, that is sort of like the bigger cost, which is going to include additional things that are not tuition, fees, and room and board, for example. All right, so let's talk about the FAFSA. You can complete it at studentaid.gov. Like I mentioned, it's open and it collects all kinds of information on the student, but also financial information on the student and their parents. You can do this at any point in time, up to like the classes starting in like September. We do not recommend that at all. Uh, we recommend obviously doing this now and as soon as possible. Okay, it is open, and then we don't, but set priority dates. But some institutions may set a date where you're not eligible for XYZ if you complete a FAFSA too late in the process. So first thing you have to do is both the student and the parent. Okay, it's very important. Students and the parents have to create their own FSA IDs on the studentaid.gov website. So this is the FAFSA website. Before you start the FAFSA, you each have to have your own login credentials. Now, as a parent, if you have gone in before and you have an older, another child that's done this process and you've been their contributor, then you can use that same ID. If you've maybe taken out a loan for grad school or wherever you recently went through this process, you can use that same ID. Okay, so you already have a login information. The student must create their own as well. And then once you have the ID, you can use the same one every year. All right. So this is what the FAFSA page looks like. You'll see they updated their web page, and you see that blue box there, start the 26-27 FAFSA form. Once you create your ID, you can go on and do it there. This is another screenshot of kind of what it may look like, where you need to go, the FAFSA form. So you see the header, you click on that and then complete the FAFSA. And then this is kind of what it looks like. I always recommend for the students to do their part first. It's just so much cleaner that way. Last year, I saw so many issues with the parent trying to go in, do it first. No, avoid the headaches, avoid the potential issues. Have the student do their part first, and then you can go in and do your part. All right. So you'll indicate student, parent on there. When the student is done with their part, they have the option to invite a parent as a contributor. Now, if the student is in a, two-parent household, both parents are there, only one parent needs to go in and complete this part. And you'll obviously input the information for both of you in your section, but there's no need for mom, dad to go in and do it on two separate times. It's just one contributor part. So the student will go in and say, all right, what's next? I'm done with my part. Now time to go add my parent contributor. That's kind of what you'll see there. And they'll go in and do that. One of the big things that we always want to recommend is, and I should have had this slide earlier, but don't do the paper version of the FAFSA. Okay, this one, doing it online is so much cleaner, so much quicker, less room for error. When you do on paper, there's so many things that you have to fill out. You can do the FAFSA in less than 30 minutes. It's a very quick process, even less than that. I just had a colleague of mine who did this with her daughter. She said she did it in 15 minutes. So it can be very quick process if you just do it online. The biggest thing that you'll notice is, the FAFSA based on information you provide may ask you certain questions that it may not ask your neighbor. Okay, because there is a logic-based thing that based on how you answer it, you get triggered certain questions. If you want to do this correctly and quickly and efficiently, you will consent to the FTI transfer, which is essentially bringing in your tax information directly from the IRS website into the FAFSA directly right then and there. If you do not consent to this, there is going to be issues on the FAFSA. The student will get triggered for a federal verification, which is essentially like an audit for the student. That no matter what school they go to, they will have to complete this verification with the financial aid office, which, for us, we don't start this process until the student actually shows up. So this is it can be a very tedious process of uploading tax return documents into a server that will be able to pull, confirm information on a tax return. Long story short, consent to the FTI transfer from the IRS website, and it'll make your life a lot easier. I know a lot of families, they want to do the workaround, like, I don't want them to see this. Federal government's going to find it. And if it's not the federal government, unfortunately, it's somebody in the financial aid office that's going to find it. And then we have the duty, the legal obligation to find it and then correct the student's FAFSA, which may or may not result in loss of awards from the federal government. So this is the quickest and easiest way to do it where you can avoid a lot of headaches. Once a student completes the FAFSA, the federal government assigns them an SAI, the Student Aid Index, which is essentially just a number, a dollar sign, that it's the metric that schools will utilize for need-based aid. In simplest terms, this is essentially the federal government is saying whatever your SAI is what they determine should be your family's contribution to this student's college education. Okay. So if, for example, the student completes the FAFSA, parent, all that, and it comes out complete, the summary comes out, and the SAI there says it's 80,000. That essentially means that the federal government is expecting the family to put down 80,000 each year for the student's education. If it's zero, that is essentially a student that has the highest financial need. So the federal government has determined based on financial information that the student has $0 obligation, theoretically, for a school. Because we know that even though it's zero and you get some awards, you may still have a bill. Okay. Um, so that's kind of what the SAI is in simplest terms to give you a sort of a gauge. I know that a lot of departments around the country, they'll use that to determine need base, obviously, but then also potential aid eligibility, so that if a student asks for more money, they will say, oh, there's no room in your budget because of the SAI, for example. Uh, okay, so I mentioned that FTI, this is the simplest way to complete the FAFSA. It essentially transfers over all the family financial information from the tax return. So in this example right now, we're doing the 26-27 FAFSA. It would be the 2024 tax return that is transferred into the student's account there. If you have not completed the 2024 tax return yet, you cannot complete the 26-27 FAFSA. Okay, so that is the number one priority, is to complete that tax return so that you can do the FAFSA. There is no exception for that rule. Okay, that's the federal government. That's what they say. That's how it goes. So if you want to do the 26-27, the only way to do is the 2024 tax return. All right. On the students section, this is the type of stuff they're putting in, very basic demographic things that they'll utilize, college plans and sort of undergrad, what schools, those types of things. One question that they have to answer is this right here. And it's an interesting question because it says, are the students' parents refusing to provide their information on this FAFSA form? Okay. That is an interesting question because what a lot of families do is they say, well, I want my student to have the most financial aid. So I am not going to put my information on there because they are going to be independent and they are going to pay their own way. Unfortunately, the federal government says a student is not independent until they are either 24, married, have children, parents are deceased, no longer in the picture, they're living on their own and thus legally independent, then they can be an independent student. So what a lot of families do is they say, I want my son to get the most financial aid. I'm going to hit, yes, I'm unable to or unwilling to provide this information. So when the federal government sees that, that triggers a red flag in their system. And they say, okay, well, you are automatically not eligible for any gift aid. We are going to give you maximum loan amount, and that's it. So you want to make sure when you see this question, you always say, I am not unwilling. So it's kind of like a weird wording, but just make sure that you say you're willing to provide the information as a parent. We run into these issues all the time and have to have the student manually correct it. Like I mentioned before, there's the tax return information. You see here, they're going to ask for the 2024 for the student. If the student didn't file tax returns, then they put no. Sometimes, we deal with a lot of students that do file the tax return, so they will ask for that information too. Okay. So next thing is, I mentioned earlier about inviting the parent as a contributor. The student will do this. They can either directly email or put your parent's email in there, or they can send a link to the parent. This is new for this year. The two different ways that the parent can go in and access the student's FAFSA. It's really a choice on the student. It really doesn't matter. They both take you to the same place. Obviously, you want to make sure that when you're inputting the email in there, that it is correct. Number one, most important thing. But then also, the student can also send the parent directly the link through, another source, their own way to email. So there's two different ways that the student can invite the parent. Additionally, the student will also have to indicate what schools to receive the FAFSA. You can list up to 20 schools. I can't tell you how often I see students that reach out and they say, you guys don't have my FAFSA, where's my financial aid package? And I go in and look and they didn't list Seton Hall. And then when I go to tell them, they say, oh, I can't, I have 20 schools. And I tell them, well, if you really want us to get us, you have to remove a school and then add us in. So it's really important that you only list the schools that you really want to go to. And then if you do list Seton Hall, you can either list Seton Hall University, not Seton Hill, which is another school. And then, or you could search us by the code there. Each school has their own code as well. So once the student completes their part, they'll get this little screen that says, as a dependent student, we still need your parents to go in. They can manage that invitation as well. They can resend it. So they can do all that from their student portal so that the parent gets it. So the parent's going to get that, let's say that email invitation. It kind of looks like this, accept this invitation. You go in, you click accept when you're ready to do it, and you'll log in through your FSA ID that I had you create earlier in the process, and you're ready to go. Again, two types of information. You get that general demographic things. You want to make sure you consent to that FTI transfer from the IRS. State of legal residence is really important. I mentioned if you're a New Jersey resident, you want to make sure that you're indicating that so that if you're eligible for that NEED award, you can get it from the state. And then other financial information as well that you'll have to put in there. Then, let's say parent completes their part, you'll get that confirmation that it is completed. One of the things, let me see here. Oh, okay, yeah. One of the things that is really important that the student needs to know is that the FAFSA is not complete until they see this FAFSA submission summary. Okay, that is really important. A lot of times students forget to sign, digital sign the page, and it's never processed. That holds up the FAFSA. I can't tell you how often I see that it's a missing signature on the FAFSA and it just never fully processes. And they reach out to us and I tell them, I was like, yeah, you're missing some information. We don't have it yet. So it's really important for the student to get this FAFSA submission summary. And that's when they know that it's complete. Once they get it, they'll know right off the bat if you're eligible for a Pell Grant, because again, that's the same at every institution. So you'll know eligibility. You'll see eligibility for some loans. Federal Work Study, this is a good example because it says you may be eligible. That depends on the institution. Because what happens is federal government provides funding to every institution, but it also is dependent on institutions providing funding for federal work study. So federal government and the institution provide the funding into a pot. So the school indicates who's eligible based on how much they have in that pot, right? So you may be eligible for federal work study at Seton Hall, but you may not be at Rutgers or vice versa. Because again, that depends on the amount of funding that the school has at their disposal in that. So it really depends on the institution too. Again, and you'll also see the SAI for the student. That's actually not pictured there, but you'll see it there as well. The next thing that I get a lot is question of, Roberto, we did the FAFSA and we filled it out. We got a financial aid package, but it's not a true indication of our family's finances because what happened was, let's say I lost my job last week. And this is, let's say in May, right? Coming up. So a few months before enrolling in college. So our family financial situation is not accurate based on what was indicated on the FAFSA. So the federal government allows for this special circumstance process that is essentially the institution's financial aid administrator can go in and manually revise the student's FAFSA based on updated financial information, okay, which could change the student's financial aid package. This is only for these, and you see I have it noted there in yellow and black, extreme hardships, such as death of a parent contributor. So if, let's say on the FAFSA, mom and dad were both contributors, but let's say one of the parents passed away after the taxes, that's a hardship, obviously, because that loss of income isn't reflected accurately. Divorce, married filing jointly to, not married anymore, that obviously changes. Unusual medical expenses that weren't reflected on the FAFSA. So, it could be a health thing, hospital bill, those types of things could impact this that allows us to go in and manually update. Um, so this is something that each institution can go in and do. It is dependent on the institution. So I would say that you wait until you've decided on where you want to go to do this process. You don't want to really go through this process with 3 or 4 institutions. I know for us, we don't open this portal until late April generally, and then we try to review as many as we can before the start of classes. It is a very time-consuming review process, a lot of details that we have to go through. We have a colleague in our office that's sort of an expert in this area. Um, it is very tedious and detail oriented, so it does take time for each review. So I always tell families that if they're going through this, that you know you don't depend on additional awards. Um, because they may not arrive. They may never come to fruition because what happens is if a family's income is 300,000 and one parent loses the job and the income drops from 300,000 to 200,000, that's a big impact on a family, but it may not be a big impact on the FAFSA. Okay, so it's important to keep that in mind when considering an institution and those types of things. And again, this is not done through the federal government, it's done through the institution's financial aid office. So it's really the school that you want to go through that process as well. And then again, I mentioned some of the things that cause um, that you can utilize special circumstance appeal for. Finally, I just want to make a plug for what we are doing at Seton Hall. We offer financial aid webinars for interested students on the third Wednesday of every month starting next week. So our first session for the year is next week, and it's a financial aid 101 where we'll cover some of what we talked about today, but we'll go into some other additional details. Um, that's a QR code that you can kind of put on your phone and scan. If you are interested in Seton Hall and have signed up for anything like an open house or a webinar or something, you're probably getting this email to sign up. So this may not be anything new, but I'm here. I figured I'd plug. I always like to present in front of a large group. I like when folks attend my webinars, so I'll just leave that there too. And then just thanks to like our professional associations who helped with like some of the screenshots and some of the actual data for this. So what I'm gonna do is that kind of wraps up my portion for the night. I definitely was a lot quicker than I thought. I usually go pretty. I sometimes may talk a lot, so uh, we do have plenty of time for questions. So what I'm going to do is I'll just stop sharing on here. Candace, typically,
Yeah.
the way I do questions is I'll do chat and um, I'll have folks that can speak
Yeah.
up and do it there. That's when I have colleagues of mine. I would
Yeah.
prefer to just answer questions kind of like in person, so if you just unmute
Okay.
yourself, you can answer it just easier. I think it'll go quicker. What I'm also going to do is I'm just going to put my email address. I just dropped it in the chat there
Perfect.
as well, and we can go from there. Oh,
And
I'll open it up. I did see a question that popped in, so this will be the one I'll do in the chat, and then I'll open it up to anybody who raises their hands. Is there anything that you wanted to add, Candace?
yes, I just wanted to remind everyone that this session is being recorded. So, like, if you have questions pertaining to like the presentation broadly, super happy to answer those. Personal questions about like your
Yes.
personal financial situation, you should have that conversation offline with your college counselor. We're happy to get you in contact with Roberto if you have any other questions. The email is there in the chat. So keep all of that in mind. But broad questions, we're super happy to answer.
Yes, thank you, Candace. That
No
is
worries.
number one thing that I encounter on the webinars. Sometimes families will get very personal with their situations. It's not something that's good to discuss in front of a large audience. So thank you for that.
No worries.
So what I'll do is I'll answer Sebastian here. I won't type it in, and then once I'm done, if you have a question, you can use the raise your hand feature here in Zoom, which um, I think.
Yeah.
It's down at the bottom there. Um, right? Is it? Let me see here,
I
because I
think
can't raise my hand actually. But or if there's something you can just unmute
yeah.
and we'll kind of
Yeah.
go from there too. So
And I can
Sebastian,
always read the questions in the chat for you as well
okay,
to like
yeah.
roll off.
Thank you. Thank you. I see. I'll do the first one here.
Mhm.
Are you always able to get a gift aid from FAFSA without any loans, or is it mostly just loans to the students? So, what happens is when you do the FAFSA, they will determine eligibility for federal Pell Grant, right? The federal gift aid. Um, that's an option that's based on financial information, Sebastian. In addition, the federal government also offers loans to students that they can choose to accept or decline. They don't need to do either. I mean, they don't need to accept them. They can decline it right off the bat. Another thing that parents enjoy about doing the FAFSA is their ability to apply for what they call a Parent Plus loan, which is the only loan that can be only under the parent's name. So the student doesn't have an attachment to the loan. New this year, and this is something that I didn't mention in there, but new this year with the Parent Plus loan is that the federal government is capping the amount that a parent can borrow per year. Okay, that number is about, I think it's 20,500 for the year. And over the course of the student's education, so 4 years, it would be 65,000. So it is a weird way they did it. But that is new this year under the last bill that passed, is they're limiting the amount of what can be borrowed in the Parent Plus loan. That is, again, that is why people gravitate to that one, is because it's a loan that's not under the student's name. That is the only one that you can get. Every other loan would theoretically be under the student's name with a cosigner. All right. I know I spoke a lot, but I hope I'd answered. I'm going to go to Tara. She had her hand up before the other questions came in here. So Tara, if you can hear me.
Hi, yes, I can hear you. Hi, Roberto.
Okay.
Um, Sorry, I forgot what the acronym EOF stands for,
Yeah.
but if you could just sort of reiterate, I had two questions actually. This one's quicker. Let me ask this one first.
Mhm.
Do divorced parents each have to submit their FAFSA? Because you
Good
mentioned
question.
something about the custodial parent, so I was curious
Mhm.
about that.
Yeah, that's a good question. So with divorced parents, all right, I'm going to be textbook. Okay. This is what the
Okay.
federal government wants. So this is what I'm going to say. The parent that provides the greatest financial support is the parent contributor.
Okay.
That is what the federal government says. So that is all I say. A lot of times parents ask me, well, what do you think? I don't think anything. The federal government says this. So that's the answer that we give. Okay. Now with the EOF, Educational Opportunity Fund, that is a special grant that comes from the state of New Jersey. What happens is with EOF, to be eligible for EOF, you must meet certain financial need, right? The student must. And then the student will have to apply for the program at whatever institution they choose to attend. Okay, so there is it is a timely process. So these are one of this award is in demand. There's a lot of students that qualify for this award. So you really kind of, if you're eligible for it, you really want to decide on a school as quickly as you can so that you can start that application process to be eligible. Now, eligibility may vary by institution, so like when you do as a New Jersey, it's only for New Jersey residents. So if you're eligible, HESA will indicate that they'll say you may be eligible. Okay. So that based on the institution, you have to go through that process with the school. They're never going to say you are eligible, you're automatically awarded these funds. So it is an application-based process with the institution.
Okay. And I'm assuming it's also, since it says tag eligible, it also has to be a New Jersey institution.
Yes, yes. All students who are EOF eligible receive tag, because that's sort of like an addition to that award. So it's really
Okay.
EOF is sort of the highest financial need student.
So which do you apply to first? Do you apply?
You do it all the same. It's all, so what happens is students complete the FAFSA, state of New Jersey gets their information, the state of New Jersey determines eligibility, potential eligibility for TAG and HESA. The institution is able to determine eligibility for EOF funding.
Got it. So it all starts with the FAFSA. Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
All right, we can go, Candace, to the chat.
Of course, yeah. Can you expand on the types of loans available and max amounts for them?
So I mentioned the loans I mentioned now were the Parent Plus loan. That's offered to families or parents of students who complete the FAFSA, right? I mentioned the 20,500 for the parent, and then per year now that they can apply for. That is capped. Um, and then the 65,000 over the course of the loan. Last year, I think the interest rate on these loans was like 8.93%, something like that. Another reason why parents like these loans is you can defer them. So typically parents will defer them 10 years out or after, and I'm sorry, not 10 years out. After the student graduates, then they have like 10 to 15 years to pay them back. So sometimes parents like that. That's the plus loan. Then there's also private loans. Now, these are loans like from, Wells Fargo, SoFi, Sallie Mae. These are the private institutions that also offer loans. I'm curious to see how this year goes, but these companies know that the federal government is sort of limiting those plus loans. So I'm curious to see how they reevaluate their lending practices, whether it's interest rate, whether it's repayment process, all that stuff, because they can offer full cost of attendance loans to students. Obviously, that's a more extensive application, but the private market, I think, is where you're going to see a lot more options for lenders. There's a website we do recommend. I'm going to put it in the chat. It's called elmselect.com. It's a website that I always recommend to students. You kind of have to filter by institution, because what happens is the students at this institution provide feedback on private lenders, and reputable lenders, of course, are listed on this website. And it's a great educational tool. So if you don't even, let's say you don't know where you're going, go in, just put Seton Hall and see like the reputable lenders at Seton Hall, and you'll be able to learn all kinds of information about lenders, interest rates, repayment terms, all these conditions. You can learn that all from these private lenders as well. And I see something came in about he's offering loans. Yes, so the state of New Jersey does offer loans. Those loans are also included in this Elm Select website. And yes, they can be used as well for out of state. So that's why this Elm Select website is a good resource. You're able to see all kinds of lenders and to be able to determine which one you may want to apply for before you apply it.
Awesome. I'd love to just hit the 3 questions we had in chat. I know you have a hard stop at 8, so
Yeah, let's go. Let's go. I'll
Awesome.
go quick.
Can you recommend a website that has a directory of scholarships?
There are a lot of private lenders out there. I'll tell you what I can do, Candace.
Yeah.
We have a sheet. I have a PDF that I share with students.
Mhm.
If you email me tomorrow, I can send that to you, and
Absolutely.
that'll have like a list of websites.
Perfect. And then we can
Yeah.
send that out to
Yeah.
everyone so everyone will
Mhm.
have it as a resource. Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Bigger question. If you fill out the FAFSA early, do you have a higher chance of awards from colleges? Should I fill out in October, or can I wait until December and still have the same college award opportunities?
Yeah, that depends on the institution.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's why we always say do it early. Try to get it done as quickly as possible. Like for example, Seton Hall, like we have some awards that the deadline for application is January 15th. So what happens is some awards you don't need to apply for. All we need is the FAFSA. But others awards, in addition to the FAFSA, we need you to apply. So if you miss that January 15th deadline, you wouldn't be eligible for these types of awards. So that's institution by institution. It's important to kind of find those on the website. I know for us, we list them in as well on our in the admissions area. We call those the special scholarships, but we always recommend doing the FAFSA early as quickly as possible.
Awesome. And then in the same vein, I'm assuming the same question or same answer. When should the CSS form be completed?
Yeah,
That long.
I also would do that as quickly as possible. Yeah, I know there's some institutions that they will do a lot of their stuff in the fall because they want that early batch to come in and commit. And then funding maybe will be on hold. So it really, you can't go wrong with doing it as early as you can.
Awesome. I would like to give another thank you to Roberto for spending his Thursday evening informing our families on how they can approach this process a little bit more confidently and these forms a little bit more confidently. This is truly like a needed and impactful presentation. So to our families, also a thank you for your time and attention tonight. I hope you all have a lovely evening. And if you have any questions, you can always chat with your college counselor sometime later this week. Thank you all so much.
Yeah, all good then. I mean, I just
Yeah,
make sure there's no. I do have a couple minutes, so I just want to make sure.
if you
I do
have
have to
like
get to bedtime
five,
for my little
yeah,
guy, but I do have a couple minutes. So unless there's I did. Oh, let me I'm gonna put my email address. There we go. I just put it in the chat. New student
awesome.
8 at shu.edu. If you have any technical interest in Seton Hall, you are getting emails from me at some point and from this email address, so you will see it. But feel free to reach out with questions as well, Seton Hall related.
Awesome. Thank you all so
All right.
much. I hope you guys have a lovely night. Thank you again. I truly appreciate it.
All right. Yeah, no
Um,
problem, Candace. Happy
no
to be
worries.
here. Good luck to everybody. And I'm sure, and if you see me at school, we do have an open house next weekend, so come say hi and give me feedback on tonight.
Awesome, awesome. Trying to get you to bedtime so you can see your little
Yeah,
one.
thank you. Yeah.
No problem.
All right. Good night, everybody. Thank you very
All
much.
right. Have a good night.
Bye, Candace.
Bye. Have a great one.